For everything there is an appointed time. And there is a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to heal and a time to kill. A time to build up and a time to break down. A time to laugh and a time to weep. A time to dance and a time to mourn. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for peace and a time for war. Pacific Fleet Communique number 117. United States Army and Marine Assault Troops established beachheads in the Palau Islands on September 14th, west longitude date. That is what is announced. That is what the world knows. But it is no news to the men on Pella, where the true meaning of the official words is known to them, and to them only. Pacific Fleet Communique number 118. United States Marines made some additional gains against strong opposition on Peleliu Island. This thought I hold with firm persistence. The last result of wisdom stamps it true. He only earns his freedom and existence, who daily conquers them anew. war is an act of force. And to the application of that force, there is no limit, say the philosophers of war. Force, first on Peleliu, and now force on nearby Angaur. These islands must be taken if the Philippines, only 500 miles away, are to be liberated. Peleliu and Angaur. 2 if by sea. Pacific Fleet Communique number 120. The landings were made by troops of the 81st Infantry Division. All objectives have been gained against resistance, which so far has been relatively light. I will calmly offer up the courage of my soul, says the battle code of the Japanese soldier. I will never suffer the disgrace of being taken alive. Soldiers are citizens of death's gray land, drawing no dividends from time's tomorrows. In the great hour of destiny they stand, each with his feuds and the jealousies and sorrows. Soldiers are sworn for action. They must win some flaming, fatal climax with their lives. Soldiers are dreamers. When the guns begin, they think of firelit homes, clean beds and wives. Pacific Fleet Headquarters announces an attempt by the enemy to reinforce his beleaguered troops on Peleliu Island was broken up. A convoy of 13 barges and 1 motor sampan carrying men and equipment was sighted northeast of Peleliu. It was immediately brought under fire. A number of barges were seen to explode. A number of the enemy were able to swim ashore. Pacific Fleet Communique number 126. The 1st Marine Division made minor gains in a northern direction along the western ridge of Peleliu Island, facing stiff opposition from enemy troops well entrenched in precipitous terrain. Pacific Fleet Communique number 131. Certain elements of the 81st Infantry Division have reinforced the 1st Marine Division, while other elements are continuing to mop up Angkor Island. Heavy fighting continues. Pacific Fleet Communique number 135. The 1st Marine Division and elements of the 81st Infantry Division continue to drive the enemy from remaining positions on Peleliu Island. And from island after island, country after country, continent after continent, and all the 7 seas, the free worlds, brave and young, drive the enemy from remaining positions. It has been, it is, it will be the same, forever so, until the forces of tyranny are no more. real war will never be known to any other than those who fought it. It is they who understand. It is they who suffer defeat. It is they who conquer. These are the men into whose hands society has placed its means of survival today, its prayers for tomorrow. They have fought a good fight. They have finished their course. They have kept the faith. Names of the United States Navy's hospital ships speak of what help their countrymen can hold out in the blackest hour of battle. Hope, mercy, solace, comfort, relief. Pacific Fleet Communique number 137. More than 10,000 enemy troops have been wiped out in the southern Palau area since the invasion began. Elimination of the remnants of the Japanese defenders continues. Pacific Fleet Communique number 139. Mopping up operations proceed. The difficult work of routing out enemy troops from nearly inaccessible caves continues. When Joshua heard the sound of the people shouting, he said to Moses, "There is the sound of war in the camp." But, he said, "It is not the sound of the cry of might, nor is it the sound of the cry of defeat. It is the sound of singing that I hear." And now, the battle for Leyte Gulf. Across the restless wilderness of water that is Pacific in name only, the United States Navy orders Halsey's 3rd Fleet and Kincaid's 7th Fleet to the Philippines. Sailing over the Mindanao Deep and into Leyte Gulf, Allied soldiers and sailors come to answer the prayers of those who marched their way to death on Bataan 2.5 years earlier. It is October 1944. The liberation of the Philippines will start with the island of Leyte. Seize the beaches, establish a base. 6 simple words on which hangs the destiny of the Western Pacific. Troops, 200,000 tons of materiel, 750 transports and landing craft. For the GIs, Leyte Gulf is all-out war. For the Japanese, Leyte Gulf is the most tempting target ever offered. And the Japanese know it. They have long been waiting for the Allies to get out on a limb. They have long had a plan to cut off the limb. Down from the north, up from the south, in from the west, the Imperial Japanese Navy converges with 3 powerful forces to perform the surgery at Leyte Gulf. remaining naval strength of Japan is mustered for one final, supreme battle. Loss of the Philippines will tear the Japanese empire in two, cutting off the home islands from the oil, the resources, the wealth of the Indies and Southeast Asia, fatally crippling Japan's ability to wage war. The Leyte landings must be destroyed if Japan is to survive. The Naval High Command confesses. We are about to fight a battle that will decide the fate of our empire. The mission of our naval forces is truly great. Steady attrition has undermined the once superb Imperial Japanese Navy. But what the sailors now lack, they supplant with courage sired out of desperation. Identify these ships. United States battleship, Maryland class. United States battleship, Oklahoma class. The American submarines, Darter and Dace, are stationed west of the Philippines. 3 days after the Allied landings at Leyte Gulf, they discover part of the converging Japanese Navy. They attack, sink 2 cruisers, and send the enemy's course and speed to Halsey and Kincaid. Darter is lost, but the Americans are alerted. Intelligence from the submarines is analyzed and plotted aboard Admiral Halsey's flagship. The Third Fleet prepares its opening move in what is to be the greatest naval battle in all history. Halsey orders out his search planes, orders them to pinpoint the Japanese. Halsey's scouts find the Japanese central force in the Sibuyan Sea, headed east toward San Bernardino Strait. The enemy plans to sail through the strait and then set a southerly course for Leyte Gulf, a southerly course for slaughter. From the flagship to all carriers, strike, repeat, strike, good luck. The Japanese Navy can count on no help from its pilots and planes, all but destroyed in earlier battles. So anti-aircraft measures have been intensified in the hope the ships by themselves can beat off the Americans. The sailors prepare to throw up a wall of fire around their task force. 6 slashing attacks concentrate on the 63,000-ton battleship Musashi. Hit after hit is scored. 21 torpedoes find their mark. Musashi becomes the first Japanese battleship sunk entirely by aircraft. Other ships are damaged. The Japanese Central Force pauses and turns back. It has been battered, mauled, wounded, but it has not been destroyed. The Japanese Southern Force, in battle array and with all boilers lighted off, rips into the Mindanao Sea toward Surigao Strait, leading directly to Leyte Gulf from the southeast. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers lunge through the narrow waters, hoping to force the strait open and join up with the Central Force in the twin annihilation of the United States Army and Navy. But the jaws of an American trap are open. Alerted to the Japanese approach, race to put a stopper in the bottleneck of Surigao Strait. Admiral Kincaid stuffs the bottleneck with PT boats, destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. American and Australian ships and sailors comprise a floating dam across the strait, strong in firepower, strong in determination to hold. The Admiral orders positions taken. PT boats, trained to attack anything afloat, with no defense but speed, skill, daring, patrol the southern end of Surigao Strait. In the fore of the battle line, these fragile sentinels prepare to draw the first blood. Behind the PT patrol is the destroyer picket line. Behind the destroyers are the cruisers, and behind the cruisers, the battleships. All hands are quiet, tense, waiting. The Japanese hurl themselves headlong through the dark, into the trap. Midnight, October 24th. Inside the Japanese force, detection gear picks up their enemy. Suddenly, brilliantly, searchlights dispel the night. The Battle of Surigao Strait is on. The PT sailors let go all torpedoes in their savage attack, throwing the enemy off balance. The PTs have done their job. Located the enemy, attacked the enemy, betrayed the enemy to the bigger boys. Now destroyers, cruisers, battleships, all in position, all at battle stations, take up the fight. The Japanese are in the trap, and the jaws close. Battleships that arose from the muck and humiliation of Pearl Harbor. California, West Virginia, Tennessee, Maryland, deliver salvo after salvo. With the Japanese under their guns, the old battleships take their vengeance at Surigao Strait. The debris of Japanese disaster litters mile after mile of Surigao Strait. More than 5,000 Japanese sailors are wounded, missing, dead. The survivors, fanatical to the last, refuse to be rescued. The Japanese southern force is destroyed. But there is no time for celebration. To the north, San Bernardino Strait, unguarded, open waterway leading to the approaches of Leyte Gulf. Through this passage, the Japanese central force of battleships, cruisers, destroyers, steams at 20 knots. This is the force that was turned back. But if it could turn once, it could turn again. And turn it has, toward Leyte. Only light American units, small escort carriers, destroyers, guard this approach to Leyte Gulf. The onrushing Japanese are first sighted by surprised, horrified search planes from the escort carriers. Should these 22 enemy ships break through, they will turn the Leyte landings into bloody shambles. Orders go out to the thin line of destroyers. Attack, hit the cruisers, block the battleships. These sailors sacrificed themselves for Leyte in the Battle of Samar. The Japanese force includes the largest warship ever built, the Yamato, mounting the biggest guns afloat. Open fire, orders the Japanese admiral, letting the feeble defenders feel the full sting of the Imperial Navy. Barrage after barrage straddles the escort carriers, protected only by the intrepid destroyers. Destroyers lay screens of real and chemical smoke between the escort carriers and the enemy, then bore in to deliver a furious torpedo attack. One of the most frantic, desperate actions of the war at sea. Every plane that can get off the escort carriers joins the unequal battle. Trained only for support of ground troops, the jeep pilots hit the Japanese with what they can, with all they have. The Japanese keep pounding away, smashing the reeling escorts, the dauntless destroyers. The reckless American attack continues, scattering and confusing the Japanese. Suddenly, the Japanese make an incredible decision. With parting salvos, they break off the fight. They turn back, this time for good. 5 American ships, Gambier Bay, St. Lo, Johnston, Howe, Roberts, sunk. 2,800 casualties. Meanwhile, far to the north, off Cape Engano, the third Japanese force is discovered. A force that answers the question the Americans have been asking since the start of the battle for Leyte Gulf. Where are the carriers? The Japanese northern force includes 4 carriers, as well as battleships, cruisers, destroyers. Steaming on a southerly course, the carriers are the final threat to Leyte Gulf. But the task of the northern force is suicidal. It is to act as decoy, to lure Halsey's Third Fleet away from Leyte Gulf, while the central and southern forces drive the Americans out of the Philippines. The Japanese are hopelessly outclassed, short on training, short of planes. We will be sunk, their admiral admits. That is our mission. Radio silence is deliberately broken to betray position. The dummy messages are intercepted by Halsey's radio men. The admiral is confronted with a tough problem. Should he stay at Leyte or sink the Japanese carriers? Regarding his mission to be offensive rather than defensive, he orders the Third Fleet north. Strike. 55 torpedo planes, 60 fighters, 65 dive bombers. Japanese maneuver to receive the assault with massed, intense anti-aircraft fire. Japanese land-based bombers from Luzon. Halsey's ships are the target. Few Japanese attackers break through, but a single bomber finds its single mark with a single bomb. Light carrier Princeton. One hit is enough. Rescue efforts by her crew and first aid from the cruiser Birmingham cannot prevent a fatal internal explosion. Japanese decoy has worked, but it avails them nothing. All three of their forces are butchered, beaten, broken. In 4 days of far-flung fighting, the Japanese lose 3 battleships, 1 large carrier, 3 light carriers, 6 heavy cruisers, 4 light cruisers, 9 destroyers, 26 of their finest ships. Japan ceases to be a naval power. That dream is over. The once magnificent imperial fleet is no more. It dies in the battle for Leyte Gulf, and it dies in vain. Fleets are made by nations. Battles are won by men. But when battle is done, the young and brave sleep, heedless of their greatest victory at sea. And now, return of the Allies. It is late 1941. After 3 centuries of Spanish rule, after a generation of American guardianship, the time has come when the thriving Commonwealth of the Philippines can look forward to complete independence. But first, the Philippine Islands, named after Philip II of Spain, are destined to be ruled by another emperor, Hirohito of Japan. The Far East is in turmoil. Under the Americans, Filipinos prepare to defend their freedom. Cavite on Manila Bay, headquarters of the United States Asiatic Fleet. The false calm that shrouded Pearl Harbor lulls Cavite. Cavite's fate, disaster. One Spanish warships, sunk by Admiral Dewey's squadron, lay dead on the floor of Manila Bay, and the Philippines became American. Now, in December 1941, the bones